picks or it didn't happen. Did you ever have something so incredible happen to you that when you told other people about it, they didn't believe you? Or if they did, it was because they loved you and they knew that you were trustworthy and they gave you the benefit of the doubt, but the circumstances themselves just were not believable to them. And if you have experienced this, you are a member of a special club whose eminent members include Professor Liedenbrock, his nephew Axel, and their guide Hans from Jules Verne's Journey to the Center of the Earth, the Time Traveler from H.G. Wells's Time Machine, and Dr. Peter Elliott and the rest of the ERTS expedition to the Congo in Michael Crichton's Congo. And yes, this video is going to be chock full of spoilers. You have been warned. Now let me put it this way. Let's say you had a good friend whom you saw regularly. Let's say once a week, you would have dinner at this friend's home with some other friends and you would talk about science and other interests that you all share. And this friend believed that he could travel through time. In fact, he was working on a project that would make time travel possible. And you knew this friend to be eccentric, but also highly intelligent. You weren't really sure if anything would come of it, but everything was light and breezy. Until one day, you and your other friends showed up at this friend's house for your weekly dinner, and the friend enters disheveled, haggard, scratched up, and exhausted in a way that no one can pretend to be exhausted, and claiming, I have been to the future. I have been 800,000 years into the future. Would you believe your friend? Now let's take another example. Not your friend, but someone who is a well-known intellectual, a professor of science in a university. His specialty is either geology or mineralogy, and someone who has published works on chemistry and who is consulted by other intellectuals internationally. So this guy is smart and respected in his field. And he leaves on a vacation, which turns out to have been an expedition, for about 2 months. And when he returns, he claims that he has followed a volcanic tunnel in a dormant volcano down to thousands and thousands of miles beneath the surface of the earth, and that he found a huge subterranean cavern in which there was an ocean with tides, and in the ocean are prehistoric megafauna which under the earth have not gone extinct. And he says the only way he was able to emerge from this subterranean world was through another volcano. When it erupted, he rode up the boiling water that was shot into the air before the lava and the magma came out. Would you believe him? Along those same lines, let's say a well-known primate researcher, someone you've seen on the news, who has taught a gorilla sign language very successfully, says that he, in an expedition to the Congolian rainforest, found a new species of gorilla. Okay, so far so good. But then he says that this new species of gorilla can speak. This new species has a language which is a hybrid of spoken language and sign language, and that this species has a culture that is dependent on being able to communicate words. And he has a theory supported by comments made by the native peoples of the area that the gorillas got that way not because they evolved, but because they were interbred either with other apes or with human beings. Would you believe him? It's no surprise that the first people to hear the stories of Professor Liedenbrock and the time traveler are not really convinced by what they hear. I wish I could say the same about the first people to hear the story of Dr. Eliot, but Congo does not have much of a denoma. Other readers have criticized Congo for ending a little too abruptly, and I concur, because it would have added so much to Dr. Eliot's character arc for him to have emerged from his adventure with this incredible story and realize that there's no one he could really tell it to who would believe him on the merits of the story alone. They would believe him if they knew him to be trustworthy and credible, but that's it. Now, obviously, we, the readers, know that it's true. We were there every step of the way, especially in Journey to the Center of the Earth and in Congo. And even in The Time Machine, which is actually narrated by two different characters, the time traveler to his friend and his friend to us, we do get definitive proof at the end, or at least the friend received proof because he witnesses the time traveler leave on the machine. He sees the time traveler in like the 1 second before he disappears because he has jumped into the future, and that is verification that the story is true. We, the readers, are convinced, but other characters in their worlds are not. And I think this is actually essential to these types of stories. It is essential to an adventure story that the adventurer is not always believed or is not fully believed at the end of the adventures. That is especially interesting for these three novels because they are also science fiction novels. And what does science need? Evidence. And yet they emerge from their adventures with as little evidence as possible. Sometimes all they have is their own testimony. And now you may be thinking, well, just get evidence, right? We should be able to replicate experiments. We should be able to do the same thing you did and get the same results. For example, it would be very easy for someone to go back into the Congolian rainforest to search for this new species of gorilla. But we can't because a volcano erupted and they are now either all buried in volcanic rock or they died in the fire that was caused in the rainforest when, the volcano erupted. They're gone. You really have only eyewitness accounts. They might as well be mythical creatures. Would you trust sailors telling you that they really truly did see a mermaid? It wasn't a seal, it wasn't a dugong, it was a mermaid, I swear. It's even more impossible to get evidence in the time machine because there was only one time machine ever built and it disappeared with the time traveler. We don't know what happened to him, he never returned. No one else can replicate what he did. And unless I'm missing something, and I hope Jules Verne and his fans forgive me if I did, I think Journey to the Center of the Earth is actually the weakest in this respect because after Professor Liedenbrock told them about the tunnel he had discovered, there should have been multiple expeditions after him descending into the Icelandic volcano to try to follow his path. And many of them would have followed it successfully and confirmed his story. So I don't know if I read it too fast and maybe there was a cave in and the tunnel and there's no way to get back in there. But as I recall it, there's no reason why they should have just taken him on faith. And while I'm being critical of Journey to the Center of the Earth, well, I have to say that the last chapter, although it is more of a denouement than what we got with Congo, didn't really stick the landing. What I mean is that he is at first disbelieved and mocked for his story, but later believed. While that's a happy ending for the professor, I personally think it weakens the story. And Jules Verne does seem to want to have his cake and eat it too, because even after he says that people started believing the professor and he became a minor celebrity in their city, P.T. Barnum from the United States got in touch with him and said, "I'd like to take you on a tour of the United States." Yes, that P.T. Barnum who allegedly said there's a sucker born every minute wants to parade the professor around. I don't know, Mr. Verne, is he credible or is he not? And frankly, if it had ended with nobody believing the Professor Axel and Hans, but the three of them managing to solve the mystery of the compass needle, that would have been beautiful. It would have been a beautiful ending because they would have known that it was true. They would have known that it made perfect sense and they wouldn't have needed to convince the rest of the world. Science may require evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, but science fiction of the adventurous variety doesn't need to convince the world that something is true. And there's something really special and even romantic in an adventure that only you can have. And there's something epic in an experience that is exclusively yours to have and to hold. And if you're going to be standing on your testimony against the rest of the world with your back against the wall, well, lucky you if it happens to be the wall of the lost city of Zinj. I read Journey to the Center of the Earth, The Time Machine, and Congo for my Rule of 3+1 project for speculative fiction, which I realize now I should have considered adventure fiction from the start. And if you're interested in more of my thoughts on these three novels, I have individual reviews on each of them. So please check out my 5 peer reviews playlist. And if you're wondering what the +1 was, it was The Martian Chronicles by Ray Bradbury, which I read for some contrast. And it was a good read with its own 5 peer review, but also so much of a contrast that I decided not to fit it into this video essay. So what do you think? Does reading speculative fiction or adventure fiction make you more likely to believe someone with an incredible story or less likely? Are there some people you really would demand evidence from, which is reasonable, but other people whom you would trust implicitly, no matter how incredible the story gets? And can you think of another adventure novel in which the characters have an incredible adventure which they cannot really prove to anyone at the end? Please let me know in the comments.